Hi, Christopher. Oh, Happy New Year to you, by the way. This is the 9th of January, 2022. We haven't spoken for a while now. Happy New Year. Hello.
Happy New Year. Yeah.
Thank you. How are things?
Here's good news. We're coming to Valencia again in February.
Oh, excellent. That's a good way to start the year, indeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. I
I
presume that
think.
when you say you mean you and everyone else, not just you.
Yeah, that's just
So,
going to be me and the kids on, I think, the 6th
okay.
of February. And then Mimi comes that Sunday, and we stay till the 13th, which is the next Sunday.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so you're going to be over a week. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
excellent. That's excellent. Okay, good. So until then, we have. Oh, that this is very exciting. Come on, I'm just kidding out here. I'm not kidding out, as in kidding, joking, but no, this is exciting. So I'm easy to please. What can I say? Okay, so we have that. Christmas all right, and the New Year all right, and everything all right.
Hmm.
Okay, good.
Yeah. What about
Excellent.
you?
Family. Then Valencia with Martin. And I currently have a sugar rush. Um, because, I mean, I don't know if in Austria you do the same, but here we don't celebrate Father Christmas as much as we celebrate Epiphany
Hmm.
with the three wise men who are meant to be bringing completely useless gifts to the newborn. Um, and in Spain, it's very typical to do a sweet called Roscón de Reyes, which is a bread, it's a circular bread, covered with candied peel and fruit, which is bleh, disgusting for me. And in this particular case, it's filled with whipped cream.
Hmm.
I had about 6 inches of that. This much. Is this 6 inches? I don't know. It's
May
about 15.
a little narrower, maybe, but yeah,
A big chunk.
a big chunk. Did you just peel off the peels or what?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would not be able to have that. You know, an anecdote for another time. Um, but I nearly puked in front of a very famous actor once, because I inadvertently put some candied peel in my mouth, and I can't stand it. Oh, it's horrible. So yeah, but once I take it out, the sugar is saying, "Hi, Paco, we're happy to be alive." Yes. So there you go. Okay, so
Is Martin back in Britain?
no,
Or is
he's going back on tomorrow actually. So
tomorrow? Okay.
so he's been here since the middle of December, and now he's yeah, he goes back to the land of cold and rain, um, which had to happen, I suppose. But, hey, okay, give me a second because my dog is doing something. Yeah, I reckon you should do. Okay. Thank you. Don't sit on top of electrical materials. Appreciate that, dog. Okay, so right, so we want to do something super cool and have some panels, and
Mhm.
which is basically going to be, what is it going to be? Is it going to be like some sort of podcast that people are going to be able to say hi to and participate and ask questions as we go along?
I think that's probably a good idea because I mean, I guess I probably don't have enough to say to fill an hour to on my own. I
Do
mean,
you?
maybe if I'm prompted, but
Well, well, that's the thing
ma-
that I could prompt you. I mean, I could prompt anyone because I don't know much about anything, but I know how to ask questions. So that so that could be the case. But I don't know. I fancy the idea of bringing other people who know about RPGs and just talk about how to make great RPG whatever. You know, I think
Mhm.
we've briefly discussed how to make great 5e, um, and I know you said that is a very wide topic, which I agree, because there's so much to encompass in 5e. So how to make great 5e, what would you like to see?
Well, for me, I mean, I think that things that are universally useful to DMs, but also appeal to players, like monsters is obvious. The subject of monsters is obvious. Adventures, I'd like to see supporting the exploration and role-playing game, the role-playing pillars. So it's combat, exploration, and role-playing. I'd like to see content on exploration and role-playing. That stuff that emphasizes that, because the game doesn't emphasize it enough.
Okay.
It emphasizes combat more than either, and it emphasizes exploration, of course, more than role-playing, because people see role-playing as this kind of unquantifiable, ephemeral thing. I don't think that that's true, though. I think that there are ways that you can even quantify role-playing in the game that allows you to progress a story in a way that is not just predicated on what the players say. So, but it's not in the game, so that's not really about the best of 5e. That's about altering 5e. So,
well, but I don't mind the idea of how to improve 5e. I mean, at the end of the day, things like I was thinking about, and I think you briefly mentioned at some point when we talked about this in Twitter, was to talk about, for instance, how to make a great 5e ranger class, or how to make a great 5e spell, or something very very concrete. So I've lost my train of thought here. Wow, this is going to go well, isn't it?
Well, what we were talking about, though, is taking different pieces of the game.
Yeah.
And the thing is that we could do that as a series, one right after the other, or we could intersperse it with other things for other games that are either similar topics or even... I think that there are ways to talk about that with reference to other games, too. Like, but I would want to have other experts on in that case. So.
Okay. Well, that's the thing. But disclaimer, humans who are watching this, if you're watching this, if anybody's ever going to watch this, Chris and I are recording this, but this is just us doing a session 0 about how or what we want to do. So if you think that this is a little bit haphazard and disconnected, this is why. But, but the thing, I wanted people to see what it is a session 0 of preparation for this kind of thing, because and this is something that you and I, Chris, have experienced and talked about. We don't see many session 0s very often, and I think it's important because you see all these actual plays in Twitch or whatever, but you never really see what's behind the screens. You always see what's the polished, finished kind of product, even if it's a live performance. But never what's behind. So that's why I thought it would be interesting for people to be able to see that, what negotiations go on, what kind of ideas come through are interchanged. So anyway,
it's interesting to see that people aren't always polished, right? I mean, so
well, we cannot be. I think we're too used to seeing super polished, mega finished, super mega cool product, and we are not like that. And I mean 99.9% of the population, we are not like that.
No, we're not like that. Nope.
So it takes somebody special to be able to be like that. And humans, we are not going to be that. There are going to be some hiccups, and there are going to be some misunderstandings, and there are going to be some sort of everything that I don't know what's going to be, but there is going to be, because we are deeply flawed. In my case, something else. In the case of Chris, a human being. In my case, I won't disclose what. Superpowers and shit like that. Anyway, ridiculously nonsense besides. So, what you were mentioning regarding the other games, Do you think that that would be better than having a season, like saying 10 episodes of how to make great 5e, blah, whatever, and then another season of how to make a great Pathfinder second edition, and then another season on how to make great world building or improvisation for your game, than mixing it, or what do you think?
I don't know. I think that there are some aspects of 5e that are just 5e, and then there are some aspects of making great whatever that is more universally applicable. You know, like making a great adventure. It's not just making a great 5e adventure, although you know, making a 5e adventure is different than making a Fate adventure, is different than making a Cthulhu Mythos adventure. You know, so
Yeah, but the point still remains, though. We need to decide whether we want to do how to make, whether we want to call this show "How to Make Great," whatever, or "How to Make Great Games," for instance, or something like that, and then mix it up. And part of me, for two reasons, think that it might be better to do a whole series of however many episodes we want, whether it is 5, 10, or anything, on 5e, and then concentrate on another game, and then concentrate on another game. Because firstly, I reckon it will help us focus on what we want to talk about and who we want to bring onto the show. And secondly, because it will give people some better continuity as to what we're doing. It's more predictable. You know, if we tell people next episode is not going to be about 5e anymore, it's going to be about Pathfinder, then they will know if they're interested or not, and they don't have to come find out and then decide if they want to stay or not. So we're saving people time by defining very clearly what we want to do. And also, if we decide, okay, I keep bringing up the number 10. It's not necessarily the number. But if we say we want to do 10 episodes, we can announce, you know, episode 1 is going to be about blah, blah, blah. Episode 2, blah, 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 blah. Episode 3, blah, 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 blah. So again, people can put it in their diaries and decide whether they want to come and watch it or listen to it or not. How does that sound?
yeah, that sounds good. I think that the only thing that gives me pause is the idea that I'm pretty good with a few games. I certainly would not consider myself an expert in a broad array of them necessarily. I mean, I'm familiar with tons of games. That's beside the point. But so 5e is definitely something we could do. Pathfinder 2 is probably something we could do. Starfinder, you know, stuff like that.
Well, I think that should be enough. I mean, we don't need to diversify that much anyway if we don't want to.
What I was going to segue into is that there are general things that I am an expert in that don't apply to any of those games and apply to all of them at the same time. You know what I mean? Like world building, storytelling, adventure design, making convincing NPCs, making interesting encounters. All of that stuff is stuff that is not 5e, right?
Correct. So,
but it isn't Fate, and it isn't Savage Worlds, and it isn't any of those other games either. It's just generally applicable.
yeah, I think, especially for you, I don't think we're going to run out of expertise because you've got plenty. And let's face it, it's not as if we're going to do this every day. I think we were thinking about doing it twice a month, so it's not.
Yeah, that's true.
As if this is going to be, we're going to need constant feeding of game. And if we decided, to do something about the Call of Cthulhu, for example, by the time we start, I'm sure that you will have plenty of time to read the game and figure out a little bit.
Although that would be an interesting way to switch positions, because then I could be the guy asking you the questions, right?
Yeah, because the one thing is I want to, make this very clear, and this is something that we need to discuss about what role we're going to have within the show, because about 5e, I know how to play it, but I have not delved deep into the mechanics or how to create characters or classes or subclasses or monsters for 20 years. Literally, I have been a passive consumer of games, and I am by no means an expert. So I am going to have a ridiculous amount of questions to ask and to learn. So in terms of what are we going to do when we have all the people, I reckon that I should be not the master of ceremonies, because that sounds completely stupid, but perhaps the moderator, so I can be segueing time between one panelist and another and make sure that everybody gets a fair amount of time checking on what people are talking about in the chat and relaying it to all of you, rather than any kind of expert, because I sure as hell am not on 5e.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that sounds good. And when it comes to these other subjects, I feel like that we could do a season on 5e and then a season on general things, something that's generally applicable, and then a season on another game, and then a season on something that's generally applicable.
I like that.
You know, we could even survey the audience and see what they want us to talk about that's generally applicable. Like, do they want world building, or they want adventures, or they want whatever,
monsters or whatever. Yeah, I like that. How long should the season be? 5, 7, 8, 10, 50,000 episodes?
I mean, I think that it's typical to do 8 to 10 for a season. So, I mean, that seems to be typical. So 10 seems okay. I mean, or we just do it until we feel like we're starting to scrape. I mean, I guess it's better to have it planned out, so. For different subjects, though, we might find that a season might need to be longer for something than just some general 10. But if we want to plan it, then I guess.
Okay, in that case, why don't we do it the other way around? Instead of deciding how many episodes, why don't we start by thinking on what episodes we want to have and see how many ideas we get? And that may determine how many episodes to have. Because if all of a sudden we start to think about what topics, and in 5 minutes we come up with 20 ideas, that's telling us something. But if we fail to come up with that many ideas that we like, then that also is telling us something. So I'm going to open a Word document so I can Word documentify what we're going to. Let's bring it to this screen here. So, okay. So how to make people? This is history in the making. I'm typing in front of you. How to make great 5e and then blah. So episode 1. How to make 5e what? Great 5e what?
Well, I mean, the first episode could just be general content. I mean, because again, we're talking about generally applicable, but I think that an awful lot of people are into Dungeons and Dragons, so contextualizing it in D&D, I guess, is okay. But I have a general advice on how to make content in general, but maybe that's another show.
No, I like the idea of how to make generalized content. I mean, I think it's as you said, I think it's a huge topic. It's because especially we're not going to focus it on D&D. If it's going to be 5e, then 5e, and there are plenty of games of all the genres who use 5e rules. Mm-hmm. So, do we want to focus that on a particular game or genre, or just grade 5e in general?
Well, I think that when we're talking about 5e, we're talking about heroic fantasy primarily. I mean, most people are coming at it from that standpoint. I realize that there are other great games like Esper Genesis and other things that are based on the 5e rule set. But for the most part, I think that at least at first we should focus on the Dungeons and Dragons aspect of it, right?
Okay, so grade 5e D&D as a generally. So that's episode 1. So maybe
another question to ask maybe is how much time are we going to spend just talking about stuff, and how much time are we going to spend like answering people's questions and stuff like that? So
well, I think the show shouldn't be much longer than an hour.
Yeah, for sure.
Because otherwise it gets really tedious. And since we're going to be doing this on Sundays and we're going to be asking people to dedicate some time for us on Sunday, then more than an hour I think would be a bit too much of an ask because, families, life, whatever people have, blah, blah, blah. So I reckon if we left the final 10 to 15 minutes to question, just as like in any panel, when you go to a convention and you go to a seminar, to a panel, usually people spend, 45, 50 minutes talking and then 10 minutes for questions. So I think unless people are asking really good questions, I think that should be more than enough, shouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe 2/3, 1/3, like 40 minutes for talking and 20 minutes for questions. We could also have, people send in things that they want us to talk about beforehand, I guess.
So we take requests.
Yeah, we take requests.
Okay. That sounds good to me. The other thing I was thinking about is in terms of the format of the panel itself. I was thinking about having a number of questions to present to all the panelists, and then from there to have the conversation. Or do you think that it should be just a matter of each panelist coming with a quick presentation, as in, platitude of 3 to 5 minutes as to what they think about the topic, and then having a debate about what they said? What do you think would work better?
When you say we have questions, you mean beforehand we have questions that we have looked at and kind of, or during the questions are asked during the...
No. For instance, let's say that we're going to talk, continuing with the Ranger. Say that I'm going to have 5 questions about, so Chris, tell us about the favorite Ranger that you have ever written. And they say, oh, that Ranger that I thought, blah, 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 blah. And then somebody else comes, oh, so you, Lady X, tell us about the best Ranger. And then the 3 of you give your best, and they say, oh, okay, that's interesting. So what's the worst Ranger, for instance? I just think out of my head. And they give me blah, 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 blah. So you spend a minute and a half each responding these questions. That takes about, let's say, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And then we go on to the another 20 minutes or 15 minutes debate about what made it for you or what not, sharing experiences, or how do you go about creating your own. And then we go on to the questions from the public.
Yeah, I think that kind of leading people to be on the same page is pretty good. Because I think that if you ask people to present something, there might be some dissonance in the content, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what they prepared is not going to be the same as what somebody else prepared, whereas if you're asking 3 people the same question, it's going to be the same content generally, instead of something that is off the mark. So that's probably better for a talk format.
Okay, brilliant.
Of course, I'm not an expert, so I don't.
Well, the thing is that it really depends. Both can work very well, and I've done both. I've run seminars in exactly the same way, so in both ways. and they both work. I do like the idea of having the questions ready beforehand, because that gives a very good structure and gives everyone exactly the same opportunity to express exactly the same things. So as you said, there isn't anything super bizarre going from one person to the next. It's completely disconnected, and makes it very difficult to continue with the flow. So I reckon having three, I'm not going to say five, but having three questions ready for each one. Now, as a panelist, would you prefer to know the questions in advance so you can prepare for them, or would you rather be surprised, or a mix?
Well, I mean, it depends on how technical the content is. So if I was going to do an analysis of a class, I'd probably want the questions ahead of time just so I could make sure that I had re-educated myself on some of the subject matter.
Okay, that makes sense.
You know what I mean?
So let's say 3 questions per panelist.
Yeah.
Assuming that we're going to have 3 panelists per show. That would be my goal. So the screen is nicely divided in 4 rather than having weird shapes all over the place with screens that barely anybody can see.
So it's going to be me and 2 other people.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, the questions should be the same for each panelist, right?
Yes.
Because you're going to get different answers.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Correct.
And I think knowing the way that these things go, I mean, I'm just thinking, it's like, I mean, I've been on panels before, so. Yeah, I think that'll work. I'm just trying to imagine the other option, which is the people talk about something that they believe about the subject for 5 minutes each or something. But I think that the question format will get to the heart of the matter and keep everybody on the same page much better, the more I think about it.
Okay, because that gives us 3 questions per person, 3 minutes per answer, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but it can be a lot of time. That gives us 18 minutes.
Right.
With a couple of minutes, 2 to 5 minutes that we can spend introducing people, that leads us to 20 minutes. If we have the following 20 minutes as a free-for-all debate, or sharing
Right.
of experiences of how you've made so-and-so, and that would lead us nicely to the last 20 minutes of the public asking questions about what we've been talking about. How does that sound to you?
It sounds good to me, and I think it's going to be interesting to people to see people who are experienced with the subject debating one another, or asking each other questions. I'd never thought of that aspect that you mentioned. Let's delve into that a little bit.
Yes.
Or whatever. So.
Oh, actually, in that case, how about this? How if the last 20 minutes, the debate, and I'm calling it debate, but I don't think it should be or necessarily have to be a debate. It could be just a conversation.
Yeah, it's just a conversation.
Correct. Could be prompted with questions from panelists to other panelists about what they said. So you can ask the other 2 panelists about, by the way, you mentioned so and so and so. I want to talk about this. And the other panelists can say, Chris, about this, why don't you elaborate?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's going to come naturally anyway, but yeah, I mean, for sure.
Yeah, but I feel with these kind of things, one of the big mistakes that I made at the very beginning when I was organizing these kind of panels for the UK Games Expo and Dragon Meet is I didn't always make very clear to people what we wanted to talk about or how it was going to be sorted. And I had a couple of people saying, I was a bit naked in front of everyone because I didn't know what I was here for or why, and this was not what I had in mind. So I see that this is likely to happen very naturally, but I think if we tell people in advance, this is 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, or or whatever, they will come ready. Also, and this is going to sound really bad, but it has happened. People can talk a lot, and sometimes when people start talking, shutting them up is close to impossible. And I would hate for have us having somebody who just starts to talk and spends 10 minutes talking non-stop, which is a bit, shut up.
Well, I really love the idea that people come, like every panelist that comes is going to know, okay, you're going to have these 3 questions, and then we're going to have a conversation for 20 minutes, and then we're going to have questions from the audience for 20 minutes, or questions that we've received, either from the audience directly or questions that we received. Knowing that structure will help people rein themselves in, I think. So I think, which is what you're saying, right? I mean,
Yeah. If they come ready for something, and they know they have 3 minutes, no more. I mean, no more. 3 minutes and 2 seconds could do, but little else. I think they will come mentally prepared to shut up, or be, or be told to shut up, which I can do. So, okay. So that we can do. So we're going to have first introductions, second questions to panelists, third conversation, and fourth questions from humans, and fifth farewell.
Oh yeah.
Because people have to say bye at some point. Okay. I like that. I like that quite a lot. How are we going to call this shit?
Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that.
How to make great? Bleh.
Or just making great.
Making
Or
great. I like that. Making great. Blah.
And how to is implied.
Yeah, blah. Making great ellipsis. So people can figure out that something else is going to be. And also, I think when people take a look at a couple of episodes, they will see and they will understand what we're going to do. So if they don't, then whoopsie. If you do. Okay. I don't need to say this to you because I know that we are in the same level on this one, but I would like to make an effort into, this is more for the viewers or listeners. I would like to make an effort in bringing less known but equally competent and diverse creators to the show. Because
yeah, of course.
I think we could easily, especially because they're most of them are friends with you, bring the biggest names in the industry. But I think we should try and have a mix of having people who've made great shit in, DM's Guild or by themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And then other, bigger people, big friends we have. I mean, between you and I know pretty much anyone, don't we?
Yeah, we know a lot of people.
Exactly. So sorry, I was sitting on something very uncomfortable. So that could do indeed. How do we decide who's going to make it? So who do we contact?
Who do we contact for panelists?
Yes. Because
I think that we probably need to have a subject list, and then we can kind of ideate who is going to be great for that subject. So I think the subject list comes before.
Okay.
Or at least a few subjects. It doesn't have to be an exhaustive subject list, but deciding who is going to approach, who's going to be good for something like that is going to be dependent on the subject, I think.
Yes, and depending on how much, I mean, there might be the with sides. Oh, this person. Oh, we must have that person, and you think that this is going to be perfecta for this, and then if you know them very well, go for it. You know, I don't want to have any particular ownership on any aspect of this show that I'm not going to share with you. So I don't care if you tell me, oh, these two people are great. Fine.
Okay.
No problem. Okay, so topics. So how to make great 5e D&D generally for episode 1. We'll tweak the title a little bit because that sounds like huge and long. Making great. You know, we can have
we could get right into it. We could get right into it and just go for species right off the bat.
Oh, nice. Making great 5e.
Let's go for something totally uncontroversial and do species right off the bat.
Okay. I'm thinking that I could get into so much trouble by saying this in public, but I'm going to say it anyway. We could easily call the show "Making 5e Great Again." Do you think that somebody might get upset about that?
Maybe, but I don't know if I really want to call to mind the orange Mussolini.
No, I don't want to give him that guy any credit whatsoever or anything. So no. Okay, so making great 5e species. That's episode 2.
Is this episode 1?
No, episode 1 is making great 5e generally. Making great 5e D&D generally. So this is the wide, mega huge topic, of which I think basically is going to bound down to how to use the 5e rules to the best to make D&D. So not necessarily because the lore is different. See, this is going to be good. Okay, I'm already thinking about anything. Okay, so making great 5e species. Can I also suggest making great 5e cities?
Cities?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I've told you about this before. I am no good at designing fantasy. It just doesn't come naturally to me. You ask me to design a real life town in another time, more or less modern, and I have zero issues with it. You know, in the last 200 years, no issues. But if you ask me to do a medieval town, I would be like, I don't know what to do. I know that there must be a river nearby.
Very often. Yeah.
Or a mountain where you can put the castle on top for defensive purposes.
Well, this is getting into the weeds of what would actually be in the episode, but I think that people don't consider fantasy enough when they make these cities. You know, they say, "Oh, I'm just gonna model a medieval city." No.
Okay.
No. You have people who can fly, right? You have people who, you have people who can perform miracles.
Okay.
You have monsters. You have things that medieval people did not have to consider at all.
However, I'm also thinking, making a great 5e city, that's more world building than 5e itself, because that could be applied to any game, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you could have an episode on city building for the typical D&D setting. You know, what typical D&D assumes, and that would be different than building a city for, I don't know, Dragon Age.
Okay.
It's not necessarily the same thing, but
no, because I wonder, in 5e, this is how my mind works. I'm already wondering, how would the magic of the 5e system would help shape the way that the city has been developed.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, right?
Yeah.
So, and the more magic there is, the more the magic is going to have shaped the city.
Correct. And I'm not meaning
So,
just arcane magic. I'm also thinking about, holy magic.
yeah, for sure.
So, okay, good, good,
So,
good.
so one of the things that had, and I could get in trouble for saying this in public, but one of the things that has bothered me about even published settings, and this includes some very beloved published settings, with reference to things like world building, is that they just don't consider the fact that there are people who can move the earth with their mind, and that's not a high level spell, right? That's it's not a terribly high level spell, and so what would a city look like? What would a city look like if your society doesn't have a taboo against raising the dead and using them as labor? I mean, that type of thing. It's like, um, it's there's too many pseudo early Renaissance, late medieval period cities that wouldn't that okay, they're fine, they serve the purpose, but they wouldn't exist in that way, given
No,
the society and the magic in it.
and the thing is, it just sprung to mind. Let's face it, magic is relatively cheap. Okay, relatively. Why, oh why would a fantasy typical 5e city need to have slums? Why wouldn't the, you know, rulers of the city say, no, 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 screw that shit. No poor people here. No need for slums. Everybody's going to have, come on, wizard, get on and build cities. As you said, let's raise the dead and let's get them to work. Why would we need to work? Why do we need to have favelas when we can have proper houses for everyone and jobs for everybody? No, this is ridiculous.
I mean, building this type of thing in a fantasy setting just requires asking the right questions and looking at what is true, um, given the fact that at the very least, second level spells should be widely available.
I mean, there's no
At the
reason why
very least.
everyone could learn cantrips. Everyone.
Yeah, certainly everybody could learn a little bit of wizardry if they wanted to.
So,
So,
and everyone who's devoted enough to a god should be able to do at least level 1 clerical spells.
maybe. I mean, it just depends on. I mean, it depends on the questions that you're. It depends on your answers to the questions. Like, are the clerics in your player group, in the player character group, unique individuals, and most clerics can't do divine magic? Well, that means you get a setting that's different than one where almost every cleric can do first and second level magic.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
It's broadly different. I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay. So we have established that idea has legs. Okay. Good. So episode 4, making great 5e.
I want to say the way, and this is the way that it looks like they're headed with developing D&D, and that is, first of all, making backgrounds and then making them so they provide some of the cultural context for your species, right? So what D&D is clearly doing now is removing a lot of the cultural context from species, and a lot of the traits that you get when you are looking at some of the newer species in D&D are the broadly biological ones. And like in Strixhaven, the backgrounds are doing a lot more lifting for giving you your more cultural or life experience context. So you're a dwarf, yes, but your background is giving you much more for where did you grow up? You know, a dwarf that grew up in Waterdeep is not the same as a dwarf that grew up in Silvery Moon. You know, it's that type of thing. So I'm interested in backgrounds and providing cultural context that is divorced from the species. So you could actually very easily have a dwarf that was raised by elves, right? Or, you know.
So how do we verbalize that for a title of an episode? Making great 5e
Cultures and
culture?
backgrounds? Culture, maybe?
Cultures and backgrounds, I like. Okay.
We should see if the folks who did race and culture want to participate in that one. Arcane Press, I think.
Okay.
No, Arcanist Press is what I meant to say.
Arcanist Press. Okay. I'll put it here in brackets.
Gwen Marshall.
Okay, cool. Episode 5. Question for you. Do we want to talk just about how to design it, or do we also want to talk about how to, the more physical in bracket side of it, as to how, for instance, what makes a great 5e layout, or what make a great 5e adventure organization? It just sprung to mind. It's not something I'm particularly interested in for these kind of shows, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
To me, that's a little off topic, just because that's like getting into art direction and stuff like that. It's not really the same thing as game.
Okay. I just wanted to put it out there because I've had the idea and I didn't want to just throw it away by myself. You know,
I think it's totally valid to do at some other point in this show a series on putting together the product independent of the game.
Of the game itself, yeah, I agree. Okay, so episode 5, making great 5e. See,
I hesitate to say class, but subclass could be.
Classes. We can have one of each. We can have an episode on class and one episode on subclass.
Yeah, we could. It's just that I'm of the opinion that 5e has too many classes as it is. So making new classes, I don't know.
But people like it. But people like making their own classes. That's I think that's why there are so many, because people think, oh, this one I like, but it could do with having these instead, so I'm going to make my own. People like tinkering.
It's true. But I'll say something else controversial. The game could have 3 classes that could allow you to build anything you wanted to.
True.
Through multi-classing, if the multi-classing rules were robust enough. But
yeah.
But then again, having a specific class do a specific thing is easier for people who are getting into the game and don't want to be paralyzed by choice. So.
And I think that also gives a better sense of ownership of what you've created, because it gives you the illusion that you've started from scratch, you know, that is your class. And you can make subclasses after that from that. I think I think it's a good ego boost. I like it, I have to say.
One thing I'd like to talk about, if we do talk about classes, is I'll put it this way: why I told the Pathfinder 2 team that they shouldn't have a class called the Barbarian.
Okay.
And to me, that's a design thing and it was a flaw that goes all the way back to the Unearthed Arcana in first edition AD&D, when they made the barbarian class, and that is that there's always been this confusion about what the barbarian is. Is it a group of people? Is it one person that happens to have these traits? Is it this? Is it that? And it's always been confusing simply because they use the word barbarian. So.
Okay. So making
But
great.
that's getting into the weeds again.
Yes. Well, which is not necessarily a bad thing either. So making great 5e classes or subclasses, what would you prefer? What would you feel more comfortable with?
I think classes is fine. We can get into subclasses too.
We can have that's episode 6 or, tentative 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
So making, so episode 5e subclasses. Okay. Episode 6.
So we have, that was episode 5?
Well, I put episode 5, making great 5e classes, and 5.5, making great 5e subclasses, as to have it tentative. So if we wanted to make it immediately after, or if we wanted to have it for later on, or if we didn't want to make it at all, it depends on how successful the classes and subclasses is. And actually, this is something that maybe we can put down to people. We can ask, the public if they would like to see a specific episode and subclasses and see what they think. Maybe they would like it, maybe they won't.
Well, there is an art to making subclasses that's different from simply making classes, but
shall we put this episode 6 then?
I can see us getting into subclasses when we're talking about classes. I mean, it's almost impossible not to. So
I think that we're going to be very limited in time regarding on what the episodes are going to be lengthwise. So even if we delve into subclasses, it's not going to be for long enough to make a really strong contribution on the matter, I think.
That's right. So yeah, I mean, we could probably talk about subclasses for an hour.
Okay. So let's put in that case episode 6. Making great 5e subclasses, and then episode 7. Making great 5e.
Definitely need to talk about spells.
Spells. I would like to talk about monsters as well.
Yeah, monsters could be probably more than one episode.
Well, okay. Well, I suppose.
But then you could get monsters and encounters and adventures.
Monsters. Okay. See, episode 9, encounters. Episode 9. Making great encounters. Villains.
Villains, yeah.
Because I think we are very, influenced by the great villains from the past. The leeches and so on and so forth. Strahd, that kind of villains. But what happens if you want to create a villain that goes beyond being a wizard that's got really powerful? It would be great to have a villain that doesn't necessarily have to be very powerful in terms of power, but it's managed to wave their way through the system to become, the owner, in brackets, of the city. Also,
yeah, I mean, some of the greatest experiences I've ever had playing games in general are this person that was at the center of the web, but physically powerful they were not, right? So you get to them, and if you're going to fight them, you're just going to win, right? Absent some other thing stopping you from just taking them out, right? So hopefully there's something else stopping you from just taking them out. Or you get the fun moment where you go to take them out and it's just like,
bing. Yeah.
Well, that's done.
Yes, but then you will have to be dealing with the consequences of having done that. Because
right, exactly.
when you get rid of the master pillar, things crumble.
Yeah.
We're on 10 episodes already.
Yeah, so one of the things I was thinking is that we could end on campaigns.
Okay.
which could segue into a general creative season about world building or something. That could be interesting. Although we don't necessarily have to have a segue, I guess, but
It's not a bad idea. I mean, the thing is, we can have it 10 episodes and then the 11th, let's pump it up to 11. Let's end with a big one, which is, how to make the 5e campaigns, which I think is a great topic.
mm-hmm.
So, yeah. 11 episodes. Do you think this is enough? This is 6 months.
Yeah, 6 months sounds good. Yeah.
I mean, unless we start enjoying this so much that we decide to do more, but I think to have all of this done by the summer, I like it. And that gives us plenty of time.
Maybe we could do an episode while I'm there in February.
Yes, we can do that. Can we do that?
Well, we might have to think about COVID restrictions. But
I'm to be honest, I'm thinking more about what's it called? Technical restrictions, because we could do something from the studio. That's for sure, but I don't have internet in the studio. I only use my phone. So I don't know if my phone would be strong enough to have this kind of conference call.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we need to talk about what we're going to do from the studio anyway. Because I want to take you there. I mean, you've been here already twice, and I haven't taken you all to the studio. So yeah, we need to do something about that.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, so I think we have a pretty good foundation here.
Yeah, I'll think about it some more, and if I think that we need to refine it or something, I'll just
Okay.
I'll add my notes to it. Do you want to maybe put it on Google Docs or?
Yep, I shall indeed.
And share it or something.
Yep, I am going to do that. And have we left anything that we haven't spoken about that we should before we stop? And I'm only saying this just to keep it to the relative hour that we think this thing should last. Not because I'm not enjoying talking about this, because I'm having a great time.
Yeah, I'm having a great time too. But I agree that going longer than an hour, I can't watch something for more than an hour usually. Mm. So I would like to do everybody else a favor and give them only about an hour to watch. So
okay, so
I mean, we're going to be thinking about it offline anyway. But
when would we like to start? Shall we give ourselves another 2 weeks to think about it and start on the 30th of January?
Is that the 30th?
Sunday is the 30th, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So we could say that we're going to do the 2nd. Yeah, and then we can think about February. We can make it on the 13th and 27th, for example. Mm-hmm. So that's every other weekend. And then 13th and 27th again in March. Wow, that's impressive. Wow, well done, calendar. Good, so let's do that. Let's keep talking. Meanwhile, humans, varied species of the multiverse, please let us know what else that you would like to see in the show, because that would be very helpful.
Yes, it would be very helpful.
So, okay, so I'm going to stop recording, and then we can decide if we're going to put this or not, and people will not know until they watch this.